Welcome occultists to another video. These stories may be triggering or graphic for some due to the subject matter. How much do you believe in the paranormal? Drop your experiences down below in the comments section. If you are new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. As I turned the key to my new apartment, a sense of triumph washed over me. It was a steal, an old but charming place in a decent part of the city, and the rent was suspiciously low. I couldn't help but feel like I'd won some kind of lottery. The apartment, nestled on the top floor of a creaky old building, had a peculiar, musty smell, like secrets long buried under layers of dust. But I was too enamored by the sunlight streaming through the large windows and the spacious living room to pay much heed to the odd odor or the occasional chill that seemed to waft through the rooms. It was on the third night that things began to feel off. I woke to the sound of whispers, so faint I thought I was dreaming. But as I sat up, the whispering ceased abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence. I shrugged it off as a figment of my imagination, a side effect of the stress of moving. The next few days passed uneventfully until one evening, as I was unpacking the last of my boxes, I found an old, tattered journal, wedged behind a loose board in the bedroom closet. Curiosity piqued, I opened it to find entries dating back to the early 1900s, penned in an elegant, slanted handwriting. The entries were mundane at first, but as I flipped through the pages, a sense of unease grew within me. The writer, a woman named Eleanor, began to describe strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, unexplained shadows flitting across walls, and a persistent feeling of being watched. Her words echoed my own experiences, sending a shiver down my spine. That night, as I tried to sleep, the whispers returned, louder, more insistent. I could almost discern words, but they slipped away like smoke whenever I tried to focus. The room grew colder, and I felt an inexplicable dread settle over me. The following days were marked by a series of unnerving incidents. Doors would slam shut without any draft, lights flickered without reason, and I would often find my belongings not where I left them. The journal became my obsession. I pored over Eleanor's entries, each one more disturbing than the last. She spoke of a presence, a shadow that grew more aggressive, tormenting her, driving her to the brink of madness. I decided to research the history of the building, desperate for an explanation. At the local library, I uncovered old newspaper clippings that detailed a grim past. The building had been the site of a tragic event in the early 1900s. A fire had broken out, claiming several lives, including that of a woman named Eleanor. Chilled to the bone, I returned to the apartment with a heavy heart. The atmosphere felt heavier, suffocating. That night, the whispers crescendoed into anguished cries, and for the first time, I saw her, a spectral figure, her face twisted in sorrow and rage, hovering at the foot of my bed. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to scream, unable to move. The ghost of Eleanor, for I had no doubt it was her, seemed to be reaching out to me, her mouth moving in silent pleas. And then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished, leaving me alone in the chilling silence. Sleep became elusive. I was plagued by nightmares, each more vivid and terrifying than the last. In them, I was trapped in the burning building, the heat searing my skin, the smoke choking my lungs, and Eleanor's ghostly figure always there, watching, mourning. I started to feel a strange connection to Eleanor, a kinship born of shared terror. I couldn't leave the apartment, not yet. I needed to understand, to help her, if I could. In a desperate attempt to communicate, I set up a makeshift seance in the living room, the journal open beside me. The candles flickered as I called out to Eleanor, asking her to reveal what she wanted from me. The air grew colder, the candles sputtering as if in a gust of wind. And then, she appeared again, her form clearer, more substantial. She pointed to the journal, her eyes filled with an unspeakable sadness. As I reached for the book, it flipped open to a page I hadn't seen before, hidden beneath a false bottom. The entry detailed Eleanor's last days. She wrote of her guilt, of a secret she kept. She had been the cause of the fire, a tragic accident born of carelessness. She spoke of her inability to move on, tethered to this world by her remorse and the unending sorrow of her untimely death. Tears streamed down my face as I read her words. I understood then what she needed: forgiveness, release. I spoke to her, not with fear, but with empathy, telling her it was time to let go, to find peace. As I uttered those words, a warm light filled the room. Eleanor's figure became more ethereal, her face softening. She smiled at me, a smile of gratitude and relief, and then she faded away, her whispers echoing a final goodbye. The apartment was quiet after that night, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. I continued to live there, no longer feeling alone, but rather watched over, as if Eleanor's spirit had blessed the place with a sense of tranquility. I never experienced anything paranormal again in that apartment. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I'd find myself thinking of Eleanor, hoping she found the peace she so desperately sought. My time in that apartment taught me that some ghosts are not malevolent, but simply lost, yearning for closure and a chance to be heard. And as for the journal, I kept it, a reminder of the unlikely bond I'd formed with a spirit from another time, a testament to the power of empathy and forgiveness, even beyond the veil of death. I am William. As a child, I wasn't lonely, but I was alone. That's why I created Jasper, my invisible friend. He was the whisper in the attic, the shadow that darted at the corner of my eye. My parents thought it was cute, a phase. But Jasper was more real to me than any flesh and blood friend could ever be. Jasper was peculiar, with a child's laughter and an old man's wisdom. His voice was a melody in the dark, a comfort during the long nights in my room, where the wallpaper peeled like dead skin. I remember how he'd say, "William, the world is a tapestry of secrets. Let's unravel them together." Then, adolescence came, carrying the brutal truth of reality. Jasper faded into the background, a forgotten relic of childhood. I'm 30 now, living in a modest apartment in the city. One night, while working late, I heard it, a familiar whisper, a giggle that clawed at the back of my mind. "Missed me, William?" That voice, Jasper's voice, it couldn't be. I was an adult, rational, grounded. Imaginary friends don't just reappear. They don't age. They don't grow bitter. Over the following weeks, the whispers grew into conversations. He'd comment on my work, criticize my life choices. His tone had changed, it was sinister, mocking. "Such a mundane life, William. Remember our adventures?" I sought a therapist, Dr. Helen Miles. "Rational explanations," she said. "Stress, perhaps latent childhood trauma." But Jasper's presence became suffocating, invading my every thought. The nights grew longer, darker. My apartment felt like a prison. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, and the whisper became a cacophony. "You can't ignore me, William. I'm part of you." His words were venom, seeping into my mind, paralyzing me with fear. I began to see him, a distorted figure, a nightmarish version of my childhood creation. "Why are you doing this?" I'd scream into the darkness. "For fun," he'd reply, his voice a serpentine hiss. I lost my job. Friends distanced themselves. I was drowning in Jasper's malevolent world. One night, the terror became unbearable. I saw him clearly, standing in the corner of my room, a ghastly figure with hollow eyes. "And this, William." "Join me," he whispered. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my hands trembling. "Leave me alone." My neighbor, Sarah, hearing the commotion, rushed in. What she saw was me, alone, brandishing a knife at thin air. "William, please put the knife down," she pleaded, her voice laced with fear. Jasper laughed, a sound that echoed in my skull. "Do it, William. Show her." I lunged forward, but not at Jasper. At Sarah. There was blood, her screams, and then sirens. I was a puppet, Jasper the puppeteer. They said I had a psychotic break. The court-ordered psychiatric evaluation led me here, to the St. Margaret's mental health facility. Dr. Miles visits often, her words are gentle, but her eyes hold a hidden fear. Medication blurs my days into a fog, but Jasper, he remains clear, ever present. "You can't medicate me away, William. I'm as real as your insanity." I've tried to fight him, to prove he's just a figment. But in this sterile, white-walled room, Jasper thrives. He's my companion in solitude, my tormentor in silence. One evening, Dr. Miles sat across from me, her notes forgotten on the table. "William, we need to understand Jasper to help you. Tell me about him." As I spoke, Jasper's form shimmered in the corner, his grin wide and malicious. "He was my friend, now my curse," I muttered. Dr. Miles leaned in. "Did you ever wonder why Jasper?" That question struck a nerve. Why Jasper? Why not a typical imaginary friend? Jasper's laughter filled the room. "Tell her, William. Tell her about the day in the attic." I paused, a memory surfacing. A dusty attic, a hidden box with old letters, a photo of a young boy from another era. Jasper. I based him on a photo, a boy who lived in this house a century ago. He died young. Dr. Miles' eyes whitened slightly. "William, you never mentioned this." Jasper's form flickered, his voice a snarl. "Stop talking." That night, Jasper's anger was palpable. The air grew cold, my breath visible. "You're mine, William. You always have been." I confronted him. "You're just a memory, a child's creation." He laughed. "Am I? Or am I something more, something you unleashed from that attic?" The room spun, my heart raced. Was Jasper more than a figment? Was he a restless spirit, tied to that old photo, unleashed by a lonely child's imagination? Days passed, each one a battle with Jasper's growing malevolence. Dr. Miles continued her sessions, delving deeper into my past, into Jasper's origins. Then, she brought something, a newspaper clipping from the 1900s. The headline read, "Tragic Death of Local Boy, Jasper Holloway." My blood ran cold. The photo in the article was the same boy from the attic. "William, this could be a breakthrough. Perhaps your mind fixated on this story as a child, creating Jasper from a mix of reality and imagination." But Jasper's voice cut through. "She's lying. I'm real, and I'll prove it." That night, the facility plunged into darkness. Alarms blared, doors clanged. In the chaos, I saw him, Jasper, more real than ever, his eyes burning with hatred. "This is my world, William. You just live in it." I ran, down corridors twisted into nightmarish labyrinths. Jasper's laughter echoed, a soundtrack to my terror. I found myself at a dead end, Jasper's form looming over me. "Time to end this, William. Time to join me." His hand reached for me, cold and ethereal. I awoke in my room, sunlight streaming through barred windows. It was calm, quiet. A dream? A hallucination? Dr. Miles entered, her face somber. "William, there was an incident last night. A fire in the East Wing. It's gone." I stared at her, the memory of the night's terror fresh in my mind. Was it Jasper? Was any of it real? She left, and I turned to the mirror. In my reflection, I saw him, Jasper, standing behind me. His grin was wide, sinister. "Did you really think it would be that easy, William?" his voice whispered. I spun around, but there was nothing. Just the empty room and the echo of a laugh that wasn't mine. Was Jasper real? A ghost? Or just a fractured piece of my mind? The door clicked, locked from the outside. In the mirror, Jasper's reflection remained, his eyes meeting mine. "Welcome to the beginning, William." And there, in that sterile room, with Jasper's image grinning back at me, I realized the horrifying truth I may never know. From the day we said I do, Amanda and I dreamed of a life filled with laughter, love, and the pitter-patter of little feet. But dreams, I learned, are fragile things. It started with a miscarriage. We were ecstatic about the pregnancy, already painting the nursery and picking names. But in the 4th month, our world shattered. The baby we had eagerly anticipated was gone, leaving a void that nothing could fill. We named her Emily, a name that became a silent scream in the void of our empty home. The miscarriage created a chasm between us. Amanda changed. She would spend hours in the nursery we had started to decorate, now a mausoleum of our broken dreams. I would find her whispering to herself, gently caressing her flat belly as if the baby were still there. One rainy night, Amanda turned to me, her eyes distant and hollow. "I can feel Emily," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's here with us." I didn't know how to respond. My logical mind rebelled against the idea, but her conviction sent shivers down my spine. "It's just grief, Amanda," I said, my voice tinged with a desperation I didn't want to admit. But she was adamant, her belief unshakable. "No, she's here. I can feel her kick." As days turned into weeks, Amanda's assertions grew more frequent and fervent. She claimed she could hear Emily crying at night, feel her weight in her arms. I would wake to find Amanda rocking back and forth in the nursery, humming lullabies to an empty room. I suggested therapy, but she refused, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and pain. "Therapists can't help us. They can't feel what I feel." Our marriage, once my source of strength, became a shared delusion. My love for Amanda was overshadowed by the fear and unease her behavior instilled in me. It was 6 months after the miscarriage when Amanda's behavior reached a terrifying crescendo. She had set up the nursery completely, every detail meticulously arranged for a baby who would never arrive. I came home late one evening to find her singing softly, cradling a bundle of blankets. "Shoo, you'll wake Emily," she whispered when she saw me. My heart broke at the sight. This wasn't just grief, it was a descent into madness. "Please, Amanda," I pleaded, my voice cracking under the weight of my fear. "We need help." She looked at me, her eyes empty and distant. "You don't understand. Emily is here. She needs me." I realized then that I had lost her, not to another man, but to a ghost, a shadow of what could have been. The strain on our marriage became unbearable. We existed in the same house but in different realities. Amanda's world revolved around Emily, while I mourned the loss of my child and my wife. In a desperate attempt to bring her back to reality, I suggested a separation. "Maybe it's for the best," she agreed emotionlessly. "You never believed in her." The day I moved out, I saw a glimmer of the old Amanda, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. But she quickly hid it, turning away to whisper something to Emily. The divorce papers came 3 months later. The proceedings felt like a funeral, a formal conclusion to a tragedy that had consumed us both. Rumors reached me from mutual friends about Amanda's worsening condition. She was spiraling, losing touch with reality, they said. I wanted to reach out, to help, but I was the disbeliever, the one who had abandoned her and Emily. The guilt was a constant companion, eating away at me. I should have done more, fought harder for her, for us. A year after the divorce, I received the call. Amanda had disappeared. Her house was empty, no note, no signs of struggle. Just an untouched nursery, waiting for a baby who would never come. The police were baffled. There were no signs of foul play, no leads. It was as if she had simply vanished. Walking through our old house, now a crime scene, each room was a reminder of our shattered dreams. The nursery was a shrine to our lost future, a haunting reminder of what we had lost and what had been lost in us. In the months that followed, with no news of Amanda, her disappearance became another unsolved mystery, a story whispered in hushed tones. But it was in the quiet of my own home where the real haunting began. I would hear faint cries in the night, the sound of a baby's laughter, echoes from the edges of my dreams. Was I losing my mind? Was this grief manifesting, or was Amanda's delusion creeping into my own psyche? I found myself visiting the nursery in our old house, half expecting to find Amanda there, rocking an empty cradle to sleep. One night, I awoke to a chilling sensation, a cold hand gripping mine. I sat up, my heart racing, but the room was empty. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice quivering with fear and hope. But there was no answer, just the oppressive silence of the night. I began to research, diving into stories of grief-induced hallucinations, looking for any shred of sanity. But the more I read, the deeper I fell into a rabbit hole of disturbing theories and unexplained phenomena. Then, on the anniversary of Amanda's disappearance, it happened. I was asleep, and then suddenly I wasn't. The room was icy cold, and there, in the moonlit darkness, stood a figure by the bed. "Amanda?" I whispered, disbelief and fear mingling in my voice. But the figure didn't respond. It just stood there, a silent sentinel in the night. Then, the whispers started, a cacophony of voices speaking all at once. I couldn't make out the words, but the sound was overwhelming, driving me to the brink of madness. I screamed, covering my ears, but the voices only grew louder. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The room was quiet, the figure gone. The next morning, I was a shell of myself, my mind teetering on the edge of reason. I visited the nursery again, the air thick with the scent of lost dreams. There, on the crib, lay a single lily, its petals pristine and white. I stumbled back, gasping for air. Was this a sign from Amanda? A message from beyond? I left the house, my mind a whirlwind of questions. The town whispered about the haunted nursery, about my descent into madness. Now, I sit here, writing this account, a man haunted by the echoes of what was and what could have been. The cries at night have become my lullaby, a reminder of the daughter I never met and the wife I couldn't save. Sometimes, I think I see Amanda, a fleeting glimpse at the corner of my eye. But when I turn, there's nothing there, just the lingering presence of a life that slipped through my fingers. I live in the shadow of their absence, caught in a purgatory of grief and guilt. The line between reality and madness blurs, and I wonder if I'll ever find the truth. What happened to Amanda? Is she a ghost, a figment of my fractured psyche, or something more? The nursery remains untouched, a silent testament to our broken story. And I, a man haunted by the echoes of a life that never was, continue to listen for the whispers in the night, searching for answers that may never come.